Azoth by Zeitgeistic. Chapter 12, Part 2. Projection. Narcissa woke Draco on Sunday. I watched a big grey eagle owl land daintily in front of the coffee carafe in the staff room when McGonagall was debriefing the first-year apprentices on the end of their dual term. Severia and Peep jumped up, batting at its tail, and Harry was embarrassed that his Kneazle had picked up such annoying habits from such an annoying cat. He swept her up, sending McGonagall a guilty look, and set her in his lap for vigorous petting.
"Malfoy, personal mail afterwards,"
McGonagall said.
"Yes, headmistress."
"Now, as we approach the last days of dual term, I remind you all once again of the necessity of maintaining your studies during the holiday. It was not that long ago that apprentices weren't allowed to leave their masters and mistresses for more than a day at a time in order to ensure maximum knowledge retention. Don't make me regret this leniency that Hogwarts extends to you in the name of holiday goodwill."
She eyed them all sternly. Everyone watched her back, somewhat more warily, except for Luna, who was twirling her wand in the air in front of her, eyes glazed, focused somewhere in the middle distance. Peep wound all around Neville's legs, leaving white fur on his brown robes. Hermione and Millicent still weren't back, and Harry was beginning to worry that this Christmas was going to be a repeat of last year's.
"When you return, do remember that you will begin the second phase of your apprenticeships, and the rigor of your studies will increase significantly. You will be teaching the first-year classes of your chosen subject under supervision. You will be evaluated at the end of the Ostra term on your knowledge of the subject and the student's success in your class. This is on top of your requirements for meeting your master's prescribed curriculum and satisfactorily completing your inter-subject project. This is, I will be frank, the time when most apprentices decide that they are unsuited to a lifetime of academia. If you make it through the next term, I have every confidence that you can achieve your mastery, but do not take this holiday as a chance to slack off. Use it to get as far ahead in your studies as you feasibly can. You will sorely regret it if you don't."
"Well, that was uplifting,"
Harry muttered to himself as they all filed out. Severia had fallen asleep, and now he was relegated to being her transport. She nuzzled against his robes and didn't leave any fur on them, unlike white cats who would not be named.
"The truth is always uplifting, even if it's not what you want to hear."
Harry jumped up, setting Severia's nap.
"Luna!"
"Hello, Harry,"
she said.
"Are you going to the Burrow for Christmas this year? The Weasleys invited my dad and me. We're very excited to try Christmas goose. It's such an unusual culinary choice for a holiday, don't you think? We always have spaghetti. It's much more festive."
"Definitely," said Harry, who rather liked spaghetti any time. She beamed at him.
"I got you a Christmas present. I think you'll like it more than your boggart."
Harry paled.
"What do you mean?"
She looked at him funny.
"Well, no one really likes their boggarts, do they? But they do typically like Christmas presents."
"Oh, right," he said. "I got you a present too. I think you'll like it much more than your boggart."
"That's great, Harry. My boggart is myself without any friends, so as long as you don't give me that, I'm sure it will be wonderful."
Well, that rather put a damper on things. The truth is always uplifting indeed, he thought wryly. Draco swarmed out then, clutching his letter in his hand.
"McGonagall gave me 3 extra assignments for holidays," he said. "I suppose I should be grateful that I won't have an excuse to fuck around, but really—" "Language, Malfoy,"
Neville said. He tipped his head towards a gaggle of second-year Slytherins, snickering at them as he passed by. They were all trying not to look scandalized, while in fact being exactly that.
"Well, like my mother, Longbottom,"
Draco muttered.
Hello, Lovegood. Have you seen the Nagle's nest on the 4th floor banister?
Luna's eyes lit up.
You saw it too. I fed them yesterday. Well, see you at Christmas, Harry. Draco?
And she was gone. Harry lifted an eyebrow at Draco.
You're brilliant for being nice to Luna. I'm not nice, said Draco, as if the very idea was insulting. But there really is some sort of nest up there. I think it's mutated doxies, unfortunately.
Harry chuckled, and they began a short walk to his room in the dungeons of mutual accord. At his portrait hole, Draco stopped and waited instead of going in, and Harry's eyes narrowed suspiciously.
Not going to open the door? He asked. It's your rooms, Harry, Draco said, rolling his eyes. I'm a guest. You're so Neanderthalic sometimes. Right, Harry drawled.
Severus shifted in her sleep, stretching out as if she owned the place being Harry's arms, which she probably did. But Harry had a feeling they were both trying to pull the wool over, so he set her down on the floor. Blinked sleepily at him for a moment, and then, with whatever the cat equivalent was to a shrug, she pressed her front paw to the portrait. The gentleman in the Botticelli reached down and scratched at his canvas by her cheek. She obligingly rubbed against it, mirrored once, and the portrait swung open. Draco smirked at Harry over his shoulder as he swept inside, navy blue rose fanning out behind him, not at all unlike Snape's. Damn it! Harry had worked hard to copy the billow with his own robes, and it wasn't right that Draco could do it too, and probably better. Once inside, a kitchen elf brought tea and, weirdly, spaghetti. Harry shrugged and dug in, as it was going on supper time anyways. He clumsily swirled spaghetti around his fork, and he watched Draco pop open the seal on his letter and scan it with a furrowed brow.
All this time, he thought at Severia.
The little beast really had been opening the wards for Draco. Or was it the door, not the wards?
Are you squib or not? He asked in some exacerbation.
She stared up at him from the floor, patiently waiting for him to give her some of his wizard food, which was no doubt better than nasal food. Her eyes narrowed at the question, but she didn't deign to reply. Draco made an annoyed sound and tossed the letter in the fire. When Harry caught his eye, he was scowling.
What? My mother is going to Greece with Pansy's mother for Christmas. I hate Greece. All that sun. Harry snorted. You could come to the Weasleys with me. Ron invited you, sort of. Hermione and Millicent would probably be there too.
He added, trying to sweeten the deal. It was a lost cause, though, and he'd really only mentioned it because Gryffindors like to explore all hopeless options. He swirled up another bite of spaghetti, but nearly choked on it when Draco spoke again.
Okay.
Harry stared at him. Draco transfigured his into panna, a much more manageable pasta, but smirked again at Harry when Severia popped up into his lap and delicately took a saucy piece from his fork.
Always a good idea to make friends with those who can be useful to you, Potter, whether they be wizard or Kneasel, don't you think so?
Harry shot his treacherous Kneasel a baleful look as she swirled his own spaghetti around his bowl. Transfiguring it was a brill idea, but he'd be damned if he admitted it.
Okay,
he repeated, just to be sure. Draco shrugged, but suddenly seemed uncomfortable.
Yeah, fine. Look, I was thinking about the separation and conjunction bits. Uncle Seth made that healing potion at third year, the one that worked on everything he tried. He didn't try it on one particular thing, though. It was always too dangerous. What thing?
Asked Harry, for now allowing Draco his shady sidestepping. He had a feeling he knew the reason for it, and it made him want to explode like a bad potion. Or a good potion, maybe, considering Harry's fondness for explosion. It was a lot more difficult to open one's heart up in the light of day, or whatever approximated it in a dungeon beneath a murky lake.
I was thinking about this book I read on legendary potions that summer. There was once a time when the word poison wasn't generic. It was the name of the first potion that killed everything. Always, and no one ever found an antidote. Then all the other potions came after it, and were called things like liver poison or blood poison. and it became so ubiquitous that it lost its original meaning. Universal poison.
Harry's head echoed with a wordless sound of excitement.
The opposite of panacea, he said.
Draco smirked. Think so? Maybe.
Where will we find that? Surely the recipe's been lost or destroyed by now.
Then it's a good thing I saw a bottle of it locked up in Uncle Seth's personal supply room a few years ago.
Harry chewed on his lip, thinking.
Is Miguela using the same one as Snape used?
She is using his student's cupboard for classes, but his personal store was connected to his rooms, and those are still unused. He smirked again. McGonagall couldn't break the wards or convince the castle to betray the wards of a former headmaster.
But Snape liked to,
Harry said.
And I'm pretty sure he sort of likes me now too, since he's been calling me moron instead of Potter a lot lately. You think he'd let us in?
Maybe,
said Draco, but then his expression shifted to something like worry.
I think it would really depend on how much he trusted you not to kill yourself with it. Harry deflated.
You half expect me to kill myself brewing pepper up from it in Pumphrey?
Draco made an annoyed sound.
We are going to have to ask, in hope that his curiosity as an unfulfilled alchemist will outweigh the value he places on your life.
Oh, that's no problem,
Harry said. He hopped up, his spaghetti bowl disappearing, leaving Severus mid-lick against air.
Let's go find him. He's always sulking near Hufflepuff. He likes to stalk the first years from frame to frame when they leave the den after dinner for the library.
Draco eyed him strangely.
It's really odd that you know so much about Snape's habit, given your history.
Harry dismissed this.
Nah, it says a lot about us, I think. I'm in constant state of war with myself about whether I want to impress him or make his portrait life as frustrating as possible, so we tend to keep tabs on each other.
They found him near a group of second-year Hufflepuffs on the opposite end of the dungeons, and Harry tried not to feel annoyed at the hero worship he received from the students for saving them from the discomfort of Snape's escort.
Still alive?
Snape said, pushing an old wizard aside as he entered a quaint domestic kitchen scene. Harry decided to dangle the carrot close.
Maybe not for much longer, if you can help.
Snape rolled his eyes.
Don't be a pert, Potter.
Then his curiosity overcame him, and he said,
What are you planning?
We need your poison, Uncle Seth,
said Draco,
with the capital P.
Snape's eyes widened.
Absolutely not. Oh, Professor, it's not like you need it anymore, and we'll be really careful. McGonagall would have me burnt if you kill yourself.
Harry scowled.
I'll wear my dragonhide gloves, a ventilation mask, safety glasses, and lab robes. It will be perfectly safe. Accidents happen, Potter, especially with Gryffindors. Do you not understand that there is no antidote? If you accidentally ingest any of it, you will die. Probably painfully. I can't say that I ever had a reason to confirm that theory, but it is an educated guess. Well, there might be an antidote after we study it.
Snape was interested again. The academic in him would always win out over silly things like ethics.
Panacea?
He asked lowly. Harry nodded, and Snape glanced around, trying to see from his frame if they were alone in the corridor.
Draco, you told him about my work?
Yes.
Snape scowled.
Alchemy would be the death of us all,
said Snape as if he weren't already dead. Fixed his eyes on Harry. The paint glittered with his anger and his curiosity.
We can't discuss this here. Meet me by my rooms.
He disappeared from the frame, and Harry turned to Draco, beaming.
He is going to do it.
He hasn't given in yet, said Draco.
Harry shook his head, still grinning.
You don't know him as well as you thought, Malfoy. He's given in.
Then he snagged Draco's hand and took off running, forcing the other men to follow. They made it to the other end of the dungeons in short order, but Snape was already tapping his painted foot against the painting over his door. It echoed weirdly as the painting was completely subjectless, and in fact, completely colourless. It was 3 times 6 feet of black oil paint. Slytherins could be so paranoid sometimes.
Draco, don't touch anything. I'm afraid I can't adjust the wards to you at this point. Only my sworn apprentice can handle anything without painful repercussions. Now, Potter, I am going to let you into my rooms, and you are going to behave yourself. You will not rummage through bookshelves. You will not swim through Pensieves. You will come in, shut the door behind you, and tell me what the fuck you are thinking.
Draco sat stiffly on the settee, and Harry slumped into what he suspected had once been Snape's favourite armchair. The sconces had flickered on as soon as Snape unlocked the door for Harry and Draco to enter, and the fire lit in the hearth. Not a bad set of rooms, really. Lots of potions, books, obviously. There's probably 3 years' worth of back issues of Ars Alchemica stacked on the floor by the settee. It sent a weird chill down Harry's spine.
It's all about opposites, Professor,
said Harry.
They create the Azoth. Every alchemy needs an Azoth. Potter, whatever the Azoth was is a loss to history. Or can you not comprehend that alchemists have been searching for the catalyst throughout history, and Flamel never told his secrets? It's change, said Harry. The opposites have to take on the characteristics of the other, like when those texts wrote about sulfur becoming mercury. Sulfur was stagnation and mercury's constant flux. When they become one another, the philosopher's stone can be created.
We still don't know how to create that change, though,
said Draco.
And I don't fancy the idea of drinking poison in order to find out.
I won't be drinking it, honestly,
Harry said. He frowned. He'd spent way too much time around Hermione without Ron to temper it recently. He wondered if Snape had continued living down here during his tenure as a headmaster, or maybe if he'd come down here to get away from the utter rot that was his life those last few years. He wondered if he'd been reading that one on the top was the May 1998 issue, when he realized Harry entered the castle and the battle begun. Feeling macabre, Harry picked up the top magazine. The cover story was titled, Unlove. 11 versions of Amortentia from 11 different countries, and the one ingredient that changes in every culture. The magazine's spine was bent open in the middle of this article, as if it had sat that way for 1.5 years.
Potter, I told you not to touch anything.
Now you ever finished reading this article? Harry asked. Snape found said nothing for too long. Past comfortable.
No.
Harry bit his lip.
Do you want me to read it aloud for you?
No, Snape said, but Harry wondered if he might have gotten a different response had Draco not been with them. There was a certain pride among Slytherins, and perhaps among godfathers and godsons. He tucked it away in his robes anyway.
Look, Uncle Seth, are you going to give us the poison or not?
What will you do with it?
I didn't bother to look up from the stack of magazines. The February 1997 issue had a really stirring account of what one experienced upon ingesting both a flame-retardant potion and an averlet match. Merlin, what people would go to in the name of research.
We're going to pour it over the stone, Draco answered for him, and then I'm going to transfigure it.
Into?
Snape asked. Harry could practically hear the raised eyebrows.
The opposite of universal poison, obviously,
said Draco. Harry smirked. Now who was starting to sound like Snape? Or maybe Draco was starting to sound like Harry sounding like Snape. It made him feel warm and happy, and also a little disturbed.
Obviously,
Snape said. Harry heard his robe shifting.
Draco, you will make sure that Potter wears all of the safety gear?
Of course,
said Draco, scandalized.
Do you honestly think I'd risk Potter's stupid ass when the Ministry is just looking for a reason to have done with Mum and me like they did Dad?
Harry frowned down at the page and did his best to seem invisible. Draco liked his stupid ass well enough the other day, but what really concerned him was the other bit. Would the Ministry really try to kill Draco and Narcissa? Well, more reason to make this bloody stone. Then let him try to fuck with Harry's love.
Potter?
Harry looked up. Snape was regarding him soberly.
I will say this only once, and you will never repeat it to anyone.
Harry nodded.
I will give you this poison for this experiment, not because of your whining, but because you have shown yourself to be an excellent potion student since embarking on this foolhardy journey. I have been surprised at your talent and your restraint. Do not make me regret this. I do not wish to spend eternity in a frame with you. I have enough to deal with avoiding Dumbledore.
Brilliant, said Harry. You'll undo the wards for me. Snape huffed as if being in Harry's presence for too long was unbearable. He was quite sure it was for him.
Yes.
He disappeared from his frame. The interior one was also shadowed black, and Harry heard movement behind the first door down the hallway. It clicked open a moment later, and blue-green light filtered out against the smooth stone floor. Harry pushed it open carefully and stood momentarily speechless, staring at the array of carefully sorted potions and exotic ingredients shimmering under the highest quality Epilogue stasis spells. There were unicorn hairs as brilliant as if still attached, and dragon teeth still glistening with saliva, and auric tails as fresh as they were when they went extinct. Harry had never seen such a beautiful sight, other than Draco, of course.
It's there,
said Draco, coming in behind him. His hand towards the corner where Harry couldn't, at first look, even see the bottle behind the glare of wards. They were so thick and fierce that the excess of magic exposure made him nauseous as he got closer. Draco grabbed his wrist.
Harry, put on your gloves, idiot!
Harry pulled them from his pocket and slipped them on, then did up his ropes and cast appropriate safety spells over them to make them lab standard. Figured he should probably not just walk the horse carrying a vial of life poison, so he looked about and found one of Snape's travel bags hanging from the door.
Goggles, Potter. I release the wards when I'm satisfied you're protected. You will take the vial and return immediately to your lab. I will reset all the wards and meet you there.
Harry nodded. Right. He'd forgotten his safety glasses, of course. Could have kicked himself. He'd been doing so well, and then, at the first sign of excitement or danger, he bollocks it all up. Draco cleared his throat. Harry turned to find him holding out a pair of top-quality glass goggles.
Thanks.
Harry breathed and slipped them on. Snape finally dropped the wards one by one. The vial became more visible as each layer fell, until, finally, it was just a normal bottle with a cork lid and wax sealing. Harry picked it up and slipped it carefully into the travel bag.
Let's go.
His hands were shaking from adrenaline by the time he and Draco got the doors locked and wards up around the classroom. He'd never felt so wound up before. Not even when he died. He'd had animagus meditation to guide him through then. Now he didn't have anything.
Bugger it,
Harry muttered and set the bag on the work table before turning away. He thumped down the wall until he was set up on the floor and propped his arms up on his knees, needing the moment to get his head on again.
Poison,
he murmured to himself, and repeated it.
Poison, poison, poison.
Until it didn't seem like a real word anymore, much less something that would kill him quicker than Avada Kedavra. Then the trembling lessened and finally subsided. He took a deep breath, feeling suddenly exhausted, probably mentally. Draco was standing in front of him, frowning severely.
You don't have to do this.
Harry grinned at him wryly.
If I don't, then you'll just do it yourself.
Draco looked away, and that was all the confirmation Harry needed. He shrugged.
Probably Slytherins and greatness, you know. It's bred in.
Harry smirked.
Whoever said Slytherins were cowards, I wonder. You lot do anything for your name in a book.
Draco sneered and turned away.
Only if it's a good book.
Snape arrived then in the red-tinted Caravaggio.
You've secured the room? Of course,
said Draco. Snape nodded. Everything about his countenance was tense, alert. Like a deer listening for the hunter, Harry might have thought he was just afraid, as they were.
Outline the procedure for me, Potter. I want you to be certain you've thought this through.
Harry did so. Snape did not seem overly reassured by the process or the fact that Harry had indeed come up with a thorough plan, but he didn't tell them to stop, which was probably about as good as could be expected.
Begin, then,
he said, and settled in to watch, his eyes intent. Draco suited up to help, and soon they were both standing over a cauldron with the stone and the poison laid out before them. Harry hesitated.
I was going to use distilled water since it's the purest, least reactive base, but...
He trailed off, frowning. It just didn't seem right. It felt too easy. How many other alchemists had attempted the very thing, using the purest base to give the stone the properties of eternal health?
That won't work,
said Draco, biting his lip with one of his canine teeth. Harry stared at it, mesmerized.
We don't want to neutralize it or destroy it, and the water might do that. Aqua Fortis,
said Harry, and all at once, more to convince himself than to convince Snape or Draco. It was the best base for separating and refining, and that was precisely what they wanted to do. Separate out the diseased, cloudy areas, and refine the stone into one of pure health, without somehow discarding the cloudy bits. Which meant they would first have to make it a stone of pure disease, and then transform disease into health. Merlin, what a mess.
Right,
said Draco. He summoned Harry's stash of the stuff from his kit. It started bubbling as soon as he tipped it into the cauldron, and they both stood back, small frowns on their faces as they waited for it to reach a suitable temperature range. It didn't take long. It seemed to Harry that both their bodies tensed further then.
Shall I put the stone in?
Asked Harry. There was a part of him that would probably always want Draco's opinion on a delicate potion. It was the part that remembered who truly shown Harry how to love potions like Draco did. Their hands were pressed against the table only inches apart. Harry stood his over until their little fingers touched, felt more confident from that tiny touch. Draco sighed, prostrated. He summoned Harry's copy of the Emerald Tablet and began flipping through the pages. Harry's eyebrows shot up. Not used his wand for that.
What? I don't know.
The cauldron chirped to alert them that the heat was rising too much, and the pressure of making a decision snapped him out of his indecision.
Stone in first,
Draco decided. Harry levitated it in, careful not to splash. Didn't react to the Aqua Fortis at all, and after a moment, when it was all still Pacific, Harry reached for the poison.
There is about 5 ounces of the stuff, he said. I reckon we should save at least 1 ounce so we can reverse brew it, you know, in case we ever need it again.
Like, in case they buggered up the stone somehow.
2 ounces,
Snape suggested.
I am not certain, but given that you've used 1/2 liter of base and the stones look as though it will displace about 30 milliliters of water, that is the amount I would use. Add it slowly.
Harry nodded, set up a tiny ward around the vial, and used his wand to slowly peel off the wax. He wasn't certain what would happen if the heat from melting the wax off touched the poison. When all the wax was gone, he set his wand aside. There's no good spell for summoning out the cork top, not without jostling the vial anyway. There was nothing for it. He'd have to do it manually, like any other potion. He reached into the ward and grabbed the poison. His dragonhide gloves were too slick, and he slipped out of his hand.
Potter,
Snape said tightly.
do not kill yourself. I'm trying,
Harry said, a voice as tense as his shoulders. Draco made a pained noise and stepped back. Couldn't get a good grip on the cork. The gloves were too stiff.
I'm going to have to take these gloves off. I can't grab the top to pull it out.
No, said Draco. Are you mad?
Obviously,
Harry said.
I'm trying to make a philosopher's stone. Potter, that is out of the question. Well, what the hell do you two expect me to do then? I've been scrabbling at this fucking cork for 5 bloody minutes and I can't even get a good grip on it. It's in there tight and it's not coming out with an accio even if I was stupid enough to try one. I need to pull it out and I need to take this glove up to grab hold of it. So untwist your fucking knickers and get the fuck out of the way because I'm going to do it.
Snape snorted, disgusted.
I hope you're watching this, James Potter. This is your goddamn son.
I'll bloody well tell him myself this kills me, Harry growled, even as he was shaking his right hand to wondrously banish the glove to the table.
Harry, this is really stupid,
Draco said neutrally.
This is, in fact, one of your stupid ideas, and recall that you willingly walked to the Dark Lord, so there are many contenders for the stupidest shit done by you.
Harry eyed him narrowly. He was well past being in the mood for this.
Back off, Draco, and put up a bloody cheer charm.
Draco did so, but made sure everyone knew he was furious about the whole thing. The angrier Draco got, the quieter he got. He was practically breathing the words by this point. A cheer charm flew up between Harry's outstretched hands and the two men. He took a deep breath, wrapped his finger around the cork and pulled. It popped free. The liquid inside sloshed dangerously. Harry had his breath. It didn't spill over. He released his breath in a rush and carefully set the cork aside, inside up.
"Scourgify my hand, please, just in case," he said. "Then, can you help me get the glove back on?"
Draco did so, and once both hands were regloved, Draco retrieved the jigger, and Harry carefully tipped in 1 ounce of poison. Draco poured it into the cauldron, and they repeated the action with a 2nd ounce, and Harry recapped the vial. As soon as the 2nd ounce was in, the ingredients began to react violently. Harry had barely enough time to jerk Draco away before the entire cauldron began to hiss and steam.
"Now the sorting spell,"
said Harry, exhaling in relief.
"To separate our impurities."
He was getting rather good at the spell. Ever since Snape first assigned him the task of locating the spells that would identify, quantify, and separate out minerals in a composite, felt like that one assignment had changed the entire course of his life. Cast a spell, and the hissing stopped. The steam evaporated at once. The room was left in a deathly, echoing silence.
"Did it work?"
he asked. Snape peered down into the cauldron as best as he could.
"I cannot tell."
He was just going to have to check himself then.
"Okay,"
he said.
"Shield spell again."
Draco obliged, and once it was firmly in place, Harry approached the cauldron. Hal feared that as soon as he peered over the edge, it would blow up in his face. It didn't. He looked into the cauldron. Inside, there was about 2 liters of pure crystal clear water. No aquafortis at all.
"Holy shit."
Draco came over then and looked in.
"It's water."
"Yeah,"
said Harry.
"The nitric acid from the aquafortis. It released the hydrogen and oxygen molecules that make up water."
"Where'd the rest go? The nitrogen, right?"
Harry nodded absently, still feeling somewhat dazed that his separation spell had worked on a cauldron full of molecular fucking compounds. It was insane. It was amazing.
A nitrogen and another oxygen would have been left. I think they got absorbed. Look there."
He pointed to the centre of the cauldron, where the red stone sat on a pile of something like sludgy sand. Both the stone and the sand looked sickly and dull.
It's combined with the poison and the impurities.
Brilliant,
Draco breathed.
It's separation.
They both looked to Snape for confirmation and found him staring back intently. His mouth was parted slightly. He didn't even seem to realize he was doing it. Suddenly he shook his head once, as if disbelieving his own thought.
"And separation?"
he agreed. His voice rasped oddly. He cleared his throat, added,
"I never achieved this step in the process. You have surpassed me in this."
Her stomach dropped. Something in those words made the whole thing seem real in a way it hadn't before. Made it seem 1,000 times more dangerous than before.
We have to recombine them next,
Draco said after confirming with Harry's notes.
Conjunction.
They had to recombine the sulfur-infused quartz, the poison, and the calcinated ash. The question was how. Harry wanted to use fire, but he had no idea what ingredients composed poison, and that was just asking for death. Harry glanced up at Snape.
"Did you ever study poison when you were attempting panacea?"
Snape pursed his lips.
"Once."
Any idea what's in it, then?"
asked Draco, and Harry looked at him gratefully and inappropriately aroused. So bloody hot when Draco was on the same wavelength as him. It was like they were quartz resonating at the same frequency.
"I found traces of angel trumpet, hemlock, oleander, mercury, arsenic, antimony, lead, and thallium. However, I'd barely begun analyzing it when I learned that the Dark Lord was searching for a sample of the very thing. I could not risk him discovering through legilimency that I owned any, and was forced to put it aside. Out of sight, out of mind, as they say."
"So, nothing too serious, then?"
Draco said dryly. Harry closed his eyes as he thought, trying to recall everything he'd ever read and absorbed about potions making. In his head, images flew by. Every reaction he'd ever read about or experienced with both distilled water and aquafortis. Then he went through all the ingredients Snape listed and tried to remember how they reacted with one another and the two bases. There were too many variables. Fuck! He pulled on his hair in frustration. They really needed to know what else was in their potion, but it could take years to analyze it properly, especially when they had no idea how old it was or if any decomposition reactions had already occurred. And now that there was a live poison out in the open, they needed to neutralize it as soon as possible.
"We're going to have to use fire," Harry said. "It's the one constant in alchemy. I don't want to risk attempting conjunction with any acids when we don't know what else is in the poison."
Draco's eyebrows lifted.
"We've no ideas what fire will do either, idiot."
Harry waved him off. He was getting a headache, and frankly, he just wanted to go back to his rooms, tie Draco to his bed, banish his clothes, and suck him off all night until he had nothing left to come.
"We have to do something," Harry said. "It's way too dangerous to be left like this."
On that, neither Draco nor Snape could disagree, so they both just stared at him mutinously.
"Thank you,"
Harry said, sneering. Draco put up a shield charm again, furiously wordless.
"Incendio."
It didn't catch.
"Incendio,"
Harry said again. Nothing.
"I'm afraid it would take a much stronger flame,"
Snape said quietly.
"I'd suspect it, but it is often best to start with the least dangerous option."
Harry swallowed. What did that mean?
"Flame whip?"
he asked hopefully.
"No,"
said Snape. Draco's sharp intake of breath said that he'd figured it out too. He turned and walked away as if distancing himself from Snape's portrait would make the fact any less true. He shook his head, blonde hair flying.
"No,"
said Draco, but his voice was hoarse when he said it, and Harry knew exactly what he was feeling then.
"I can't stop fiend fire,"
Harry whispered.
I don't know how. I do,
Snape said.
but it is not easy.
It sounded like the words were being pulled from his mouth like teeth. Every syllable painful and unwanted. He was dead, and even he was frightened of it. Perhaps fire became even more terrifying when one was highly flammable paint and canvas, though he'd not seemed at all bothered by incendio. "Fuck!" said Draco. "Fuck!" He was pulling on his hair. Little strands coming out in his fingers, and all Harry could think of was the feel of Draco's horrified breathing against his neck, and the stomach-churning sound of Crabbe dying, and the 10 sharp bruises on his waist that had taken 4 weeks to fully disappear.
"Professor, there has to be another spell. If there is,"
Snape said,
"I do not know it. We could burn down the whole bloody castle. Or the doors," said Snape. "And trap ourselves in," Draco said. "Are you mad?" "Fine, Draco,"
Snape said.
"do as you wish. Carry the fucking poisoned stone around in your fucking pocket if you so desire. It is your life, at least for the brief seconds between when your skin touches it or breathes in its dust and when your entire nervous system disintegrates between your bones."
Draco shuddered and retreated to the corner of the classroom. Harry glared at the portrait.
"How do you end the spell? It can only be performed wandless. Wild magic does not respond to wands."
Harry nodded. He could have figured that himself.
"And the incantation?" "None,"
said Snape.
"Pure will. You must destroy it utterly. It will take everything you have."
He laughed humorously.
"Of course."
He turned around.
"Draco, go out. I'll get you when it's over."
"Fuck off, Potter," Draco said, and stayed right where he was.
"Bloody hell, Draco, I want this fucking well over with. I've got a goddamn migraine and this fire terrifies the shit out of me, and I want to go to bed, but I can't because I've done something extremely stupid and dangerous, and I've got to fucking fix it first, so if it's okay with you, get the fuck out so I can sort this."
"I'm not leaving." To demonstrate, he flicked his wand in an annoyed arc, and a set of sharp, shimmering wards snapped into place. "Proceed." Harry could have screamed in frustration, but it was going on midnight by this point. The last thing he wanted to do was attract the attention of students or faculty. It was at this point, however, that he realized he didn't know the incantation for fiend fire. "I'll do it," Draco said, like it was Harry's very own quartz. He didn't have the energy to argue anymore. He needed to save everything he had to stop this hateful spell before it grew too big. The memory came to him of his visit to the Room of Requirement during 8th year. It was still burning. Couldn't stop it this time. They would burn forever, too. Draco slashed his wand, murmured an incantation that Harry was grateful he couldn't hear. The cauldron immediately lit up in furious gold flames. The fire screamed. Draco made a pained sound. Harry took his hand and squeezed hard. Had the stone conjuncted again? It should have made a sound like glass cracking under pressure, but it was hard to hear it over the screaming. Took a couple of steps closer, legs trembling from the adrenaline. Behind the flames, Harry could make out Snape's portrait, the man himself staring avidly at the reaction. The flames had nearly reached the ceiling now. Harry had no idea if conjunction had been achieved yet, but if it hadn't, they would find some other way, because he could not stand to be in this room with this fire another second. Closed his eyes, his feet were grounded firmly. He pulled, and his magic came, rushing up from his toes and surging into his fingers. Threw it at the cauldron, and the fire swerved backwards at the impact. When it steadied again, it was half as tall, but it had noticed them now. The flames reached out for them, calling their names, screaming and writhing. As one, they jumped back, and Harry stumbled against one of the rickety old student desks. Draco grabbed him before he could fall, and they turned to face the fiend fire again.
Again, Potter?
Snape yelled. Harry nodded. His face was bloodless, but the heat was so great that he was sweating. He pulled up his magic again and shot it towards the burning cauldron. It was prepared this time, and only another third of its flames were destroyed. Harry could barely breathe from his terror, and it was not helping his concentration at all. And he was tired, physically and magically. He tried calling up another blast of magic, but the attempt left him dizzy and disoriented. He stumbled forwards, and the fiend-fire reached out. He watched, dazed, as hellish fingers curled towards his face, seeking life and soul. He'd almost welcome it at this point. He was so tired. Then Draco yelled and jerked him backwards, away from the flame. He swung his arm, and a burst of fierce white light shot from his fingers and slammed into the cauldron. It flung it from the table into the wall beyond. The sound of iron clanking against stone rang through the room, petrifyingly loud. When it stopped reverberating, the fire was gone, and the only sound was Draco's furious panting. Harry pulled himself to his feet. Dizzily, he stumbled into Draco, who was immediately crushed within his arms. "Don't you fucking dare," Draco whispered. "What?" Harry croaked. "Don't you fucking dare," he repeated. "Don't you fucking dare, you stupid, idiotic, half-witted twat." Harry swallowed, nodded. "Okay." Draco's arms tightened momentarily and then released him. He remained upright through sheer bloody-mindedness. He approached the upended cauldron warily. The lip was deformed and melted. Harry kicked it away, and it clanged as it rolled over the stone floor. Beneath it, the stone sat smouldering. It was recompressed into a single snitch-sized blood-red stone. It was beautiful and translucent, but it was still poisoned, and even conjunction had not fixed that. Even fiend-fire had not fixed that. Or maybe that was precisely what was supposed to happen. "Harry, Mel and I are taking the 7 a.m. International Portkey out of Sydney on Friday morning. We have stopovers in Jakarta and Cairo, then we'll take the 3 p.m. to London, assuming we don't get delayed at customs. We'll fly directly to the Weasleys from arrivals. Could you have the elves pack up all our things and bring them with you? I'm bloody knackered, and we haven't even left yet. Don't forget Peep. I know he's a little shit, but Mel will kill me if you leave him behind. See you soon. Hermione." And not a bloody word about whether they'd fixed her parents or not. To be continued. Thank you for listening to this chapter of Azoth by Zeitgeistic. If you'd like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, or AO3.